Why don't the UFOs land on the White House lawn? Why don't the alien occupants step out and say, "Take me to your leader"? Why don't they make formal contact? These obvious questions, which people have posed for years, deserve thoughtful consideration. Yet the questions themselves are problematic, because they are based on the assumption that the aliens want to make themselves known, establish contact with humans, and speak to our leaders. This assumption is incorrect. The evidence surrounding the UFO and abduction phenomenon strongly points, not to revelation, but to concealment as the goal. Why should the aliens want to keep the UFO and abduction phenomenon a secret? Secrecy benefits the aliens and befuddles the humans. It hides the facts and fuels endless speculations. It is responsible for prolonged and rancorous debate between proponents and debunkers over the phenomenon's legitimacy. Secrecy also has a powerful and negative influence on abductees. It causes them and the public to question their sanity. Without secrecy, there would be no UFO and abduction controversy. Yet millions of people around the world have observed UFOs. Numerous photographs, motion pictures, and videos of UFOs have stood the test of scientific analysis. Radar traces have been part of the hard evidence for many years. How can we reconcile all the overt evidence with a policy of secrecy? Ultimately, UFO sightings do not compromise secrecy. It is impossible to base an analysis of aliens' motivations and goals on the sightings of UFOs and, occasionally, their occupants. We must conclude, then, that the aliens actively dictate the terms upon which we can study them. They have chosen not to land on the White House lawn. They have chosen not to make overt contact. In the 1960s, the great French UFO researcher Aimé Michel succinctly labeled this a problem of non-contact. The abduction phenomenon has always been more secretive than the UFO sighting phenomenon. Researchers investigated UFO sightings for 14 years before they came upon an abduction case. Another 25 years elapsed before they understood that abductions were enormously widespread and the central focus of the UFO phenomenon. When researchers first began to investigate abductions, they assumed that an abduction was a one-time, adult-onset event. Abductions suggested curiosity rather than manipulation on the part of the aliens. As abductees recalled fragments of events, researchers decided that aliens were studying or experimenting on people. The secretive aliens were finished with their examination of Earth's flora and fauna, and had turned their attention to studying humans. As the number of abduction reports grew, many researchers adopted the ethical non-interference argument, and assumed that aliens conducted their study in secret in order not to disrupt the subject's life. Memories of an abduction could be so traumatic that they would negatively interfere with the abductee's psychological well-being. In addition, researchers assumed the aliens gave abductees post-hypnotic suggestions not to remember an event, so that it would be buried in the subject's unconscious. Other researchers hypothesized that an abductee would not remember an abduction, because the natural defenses of the human brain repress the traumatic event. The human mind could not cope with the impossibility and terror of an alien abduction. Rather than confronting the horrendous events, the mind buried the memories deep within it, and only allowed tiny pieces to bleed through. Investigators had to use hypnosis to recover these repressed memories. The argument that aliens operate in secrecy in order not to disrupt abductees' lives might have merit were it not for the fact that the disruption in their lives is enormous even without conscious recollection of their abduction experiences. If the aliens were indeed concerned about not causing personal disruption, they would not abduct people in the first place, or, at the very least, not so often over the course of their lives. The hypotheses that abductees repress memories to cope with the trauma of an abduction also have evidential problems. The mechanisms of traumatic memory repression are highly debatable, and even if the hypothesis is true, the frequency of abductions militates against repression in every case. There are many abduction events that are not traumatic and they, too, are not remembered. Furthermore, researchers have uncovered no reports of post-hypnotic procedures that aliens might use to bury the abduction event. If these procedures existed, researchers would be seeing them during every abduction. Although the exact neurology is not known, it is most likely that the aliens store the abduction events directly in the abductee's long-term memory system, bypassing short-term memory and preventing the triggering mechanism that allows for its reconstitution. Hypnosis restores the trigger that allows the memories to come forth. Reshma Kamal was told that the reason the aliens do not erase the memories altogether is that there are aspects of them that must be retained by abductees for future reference. Thus, the memories are intact, but inaccessible through normal recall. For years, the abduction phenomenon has lain hidden under layers of direct and indirect protection, societal beliefs, scientific hostility, incomplete conscious recall, confabulation in hypnotically recalled testimony, and alien-induced memory manipulation. Unlike sightings of UFOs, there are no radar traces, photographs, films, or videotapes. The evidence is primarily anecdotal, with an occasional artifact. Only one thing is certain: whatever the reason for it, the alien secrecy strategy has been enormously successful. Most people who have had a lifetime of abduction experiences remain unaware of what has happened to them. They would deny as lunacy any suggestion that they were involved with the abduction phenomenon, even if they had been abducted just hours before. The starting point of secrecy is to prevent the abductee from remembering what happened, a strategy that is more comprehensive than just inculcating amnesia. First, all those near the abduction event must not be aware of what is happening. Therefore, the aliens routinely immobilize, render unconscious, or perceptually alter potential witnesses to the abduction. In effect, they switch off proximate people so that they cannot interfere in the event. Husbands, wives, friends, and bystanders all are made unaware of the abduction. Second, the abductee is separated from a group. For example, if he is at a picnic, he will take a walk and not return for an hour and a half. When he returns, he explains vaguely that he lost track of time, and his friends ignore the incident. Thus, the aliens maintain secrecy, while abducting someone from a large group of people. Third, to render memory recall more difficult, the aliens cloud what memory the abductee has by injecting confusing and false memories into his mind. For example, if the person is abducted from bed, he might remember an unusually vivid and realistic dream. Other abductions might produce screen memories of animals staring at the abductee: owls, deer, monkeys, raccoons. An abductee might think he saw an angel, a devil, or a deceased relative standing by his bed. Society provides a menu of explanations, and the abductees pick and choose depending on their background and culture. Secrecy extends to the physical aspect of the abduction, and cloaking the removal of an abductee is an integral part of it. When a person is abducted from his normal environment, he reports that he floated directly out of a closed window, or through the wall, or through the ceiling and roof and up into a waiting UFO. Yet people on the outside rarely see this because the aliens somehow render themselves, the abductees, and the UFO unseeable during this time. Abductions often take place from automobiles, and the aliens institute secrecy in this situation as well. When a person is driving, the aliens cause the car to stop, so that the abductee can walk to a UFO waiting by the side of the road. Sometimes the abductee floats directly through the windshield. Typically, the aliens wait until there are no other cars on the road, or they compel the abductee to drive down a deserted road, and wait for the abduction. Often, the aliens take the car with the abductee, resolving the problem of having an abandoned vehicle on the side of the road. Yet the secrecy policy has not been implemented perfectly. The aliens apparently cannot maintain total secrecy. Witnesses see UFOs. Traces of their existence have been left behind in the form of marks on the ground and physical effects upon the environment. Many abductees have conscious memories of their experiences. Abductees are aware of missing time. They have unexplainable scars and other physical clues. In addition to these symptoms of abduction activity, the secrecy policy has many other vulnerabilities. The first vulnerable point is the mechanical device implanted in many abductees. Walking around with an implant can be risky. The monitoring system that alerts aliens to attempts to remove the implant only works in a non-emergency situation. To my knowledge, on at least 20 occasions abductees, who are unaware of their abduction experiences, have either sneezed out an implant or discharged it in another way. Potentially, the discharge can compromise secrecy. The aliens have been lucky that this has not been the case. The puzzled and unaware abductees have assumed that they accidentally acquired the object. The wind must have blown it into my nose. Or an abductee might feel compelled to discard the object. For example, a young woman discharged a 2-inch yellow plastic-like object vaginally, which, of course, shocked and frightened her. She knew that she had to get rid of the object immediately. She flushed it down the toilet, and then she flushed the toilet 3 more times to make sure that it had disappeared. Then she felt better. Not being taped on video equipment or photographed is essential to maintain the aliens' secrecy. They are extremely careful to make sure that the abductee turns off photographic detection equipment before an abduction. If necessary, they can cause a power failure in the house or neighborhood to prevent the detection equipment from working. They do not want to be seen.